G'day, Dr. Karl here. Let me tell you how the colour purple changed warfare, it changed medicine, and it changed what you drink on a Friday night. In 41 BC, Cleopatra, Egypt's last pharaoh, was sailing up a river in what is now southern Turkey. Her ship was adorned with gold. It had silver oars, but it wasn't the gold or the silver that told the world that she was the most powerful woman alive on planet Earth. No, it was her sails. They were a deep reddish purple called Tyrian purple. Now, most pigments came from crushed up plants or rocks, but that purple came from this spiky little guy, a murex snail, or more specifically, a gland near the anus of the murex snail. The pigment was worth more than 3 times its weight in gold. And if you weren't rich or powerful enough, an emperor could kill you for simply daring to wear that colour. So this is the story of how the bum of a humble snail changed the world. In the year 2023, a 21-year-old computer science student named Luke trained an AI to read a scroll that had not been opened in 2,000 years. That scroll was one of over 600 scrolls that had been buried when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, the very same eruption that buried Pompeii and preserved that ancient city. Now, the scrolls were scorched black. They were so fragile that when they were first discovered in 1752, they disintegrated while they were being unrolled. What lay inside was one of the most tantalising mysteries in archaeology. The scrolls were first scanned in 3D, and then, using complex algorithms, they were digitally unwrapped. Luke used AI to decipher the charred images. I love it to pieces when AI does something good. Now, the very first word that was processed was porphyros, the Greek word for purple. Wow. That scroll came from one of the oldest intact libraries from the ancient world. It's believed to have belonged to a Roman senator named Lucius Calpurnius Piso. He was a man wealthy enough and powerful enough to wear purple. He also happened to be Julius Caesar's father-in-law. Julius Caesar, as in, yes, Cleopatra and Caesar, the love affair they've made movies about. Now, to make just 1 gram of that legendary purple dye, you needed about 45 kilograms of spiky murex sea snails. Roughly 10,000 of these guys. Inside every one of these snails, tucked right next to its rectum, is a tiny organ called the hypobranchial gland. Each one holds just a few drops of mucus, evolved to work like our snots, but filtering gunk from the water that the snail runs past its gills. Just as an aside, the ink sac in squids, it evolved from the hypobranchial gland. And that mucus, that is what the dyers were after. But here's the weird twist. The goo wasn't purple. It wasn't even close to purple. It was just a smear of pale slime. So how did they get the most expensive colour on planet Earth out of that? Well, the glands were crushed, they were mixed with salt, and they were heated on a medium heat in lead pots for several days. Then they needed urine. So, according to the records, children were paid a bronze coin for their urine. They added the urine and some other things. They then waited. The brew would ferment as the bacteria in the rotting snail flesh broke everything down.
Bon appétit.
When the snail gland juice turned yellow, it was almost ready. They would then filter out the impurities, dip the fabric in the juice, and hang the fabric in the sun. And within minutes, the air and the sunlight did something extraordinary. They oxidized the dye, and the colour changed from yellow to green to purple. While the actual transformation was mesmerising, it came with a less than enticing smell, which has been described as a heady mixture of rotting shellfish, faeces and garlic. The smell was so bad that the dye makers were banished to outside the city walls. So that's how they made a colour fit for royalty. Around 1453, the Byzantine Empire fell, and the recipe was lost with it, until some 4 centuries later, when in 1856 an 18-year-old accidentally created an artificial version that brought purple to the masses. Now, the story of how it came about begins with gin and tonic. Winston Churchill once said that gin and tonic saved more Englishmen's lives and minds than all the doctors in the Empire. And there was indeed an element of truth there. As the British Empire expanded across India, malaria killed more soldiers than the armies they were fighting. The only thing that worked against malaria was quinine, which comes from the bark of a South American cinchona tree. It was often sold as a bitter white powder or in medicinal pellets, but it tasted foul, and it could cause ringing in the ears and headaches and nausea. Of course, the soldiers hated it. So the British officers did what any reasonable person would do. They added sugar. Oh, and of course, gin. So that's where today's gin and tonic came from. It's actually a 19th century anti-malarial medicine. But here's the thing. Quinine, it was incredibly expensive to produce. So the chemists tried to synthesize it in the lab. And then along came an 18-year-old with a home laboratory. William Henry Perkin. He was working at home over the Easter holidays. He was trying to make a synthetic quinine from aniline, which is a colourless aromatic oil derived from, and pay attention here, coal tar. We'll be coming back to that. He failed. Instead, at the bottom of his flask was a black sludge. When he tried to clean it away with a cloth and ethanol, wait for it, the cloth turned purple. Oh my God, OMG! Yes, the same deep, rich purple that royalty and the wealthy wore for centuries.
Marvelous reaction. Beautiful colour.
Perkin had just created the first artificial dye, but amazingly, he had also recreated the most expensive colour of the last 3,000 years, a secret that had been lost for centuries. Of course, it was a hit. The Empress of France started wearing it. Queen Victoria wore it to her daughter's wedding. It became known as mauve. And at age 18, with the help of his father and brother, Perkin opened the world's first synthetic dye factory. Within just 20 years, 90% of all dyes were synthetic. But then the Germans saw what Perkin had done and they thought to themselves, we can do this bigger. Bayer, which today is one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the whole world, started as a German dye factory. Then other colours followed, and then other chemicals. Remember the coal tar that Perkins started with? Actually, I put some on my head every now and then to stop incipient psoriasis. Anyhow, it turns out that when you pull coal tar apart to make dyes, some of those resulting chemicals can be turned into pharmaceuticals. Bayer's first drugs were made from a byproduct of dye manufacturing. Now, to make dyes and drugs at an industrial scale, you need acids like sulfuric acid and nitric acid. The chemistry used to produce them can also be used to make fertilizers. And once you make fertilizers, you can make explosives. And once you can make explosives, you can make poison gas. In 1917, the Germans started mass-producing mustard gas. Mustard gas was one of the most feared chemical weapons of the First World War. It burnt the skin, the eyes, the lungs, and sometimes you did not know that you had been affected until hours later. But then the doctors noted something unusual about the soldiers who had been affected by mustard gas. Their white blood cell counts were low. You see, the gas was destroying the cells. More specifically, cells that divide quickly. But for researchers, it sparked a different kind of thought. If mustard gas could attack rapidly dividing cells they wanted, could that same property be used to target other cells that divide rapidly in the body? Other cells like cancer. Cancer cells divide quickly, and that's the problem. They will not stop dividing, and they end up forming masses or tumours. Today, alkylating agents, the chemical descendants of mustard gas, are used in almost every type of cancer treatment. Lymphoma survival rates have more than doubled. William Perkin wanted to cure malaria. He failed, and instead recreated one of the most expensive colours of the last 3,000 years. Those industrialised dye factories turned their focus to war and made weapons, and then those weapons became medicine. Not bad for a snail's bum.